Welcome to the TREPX Podcast. TREP is short for entrepreneur. One of the most meaningful and rewarding, yet difficult challenges you can take on. The TREPX Podcast gives you actionable insights, real examples, and success X factors from experienced entrepreneurs as we are learning, living, and sharing in the exciting endeavor of entrepreneurship. Now here's your fellow entrepreneurial traveler and host, Micky Deming.
Hey, welcome to the TREPX Podcast. This is Micky Deming. Very excited to be here today sharing another interview with you. Had a lot of fun in this interview talking to Mackenzie. He's the founder of Guava Box and also Do Inbound. And man, he is an expert. He is a really, really deep thinker in the space of content marketing. Content marketing is something that a lot of people talk about, that it's a buzzword. It's kind of overwhelming for people. Don't know how to start, don't know really how to make sense of it. This interview is definitely for you if that's something you've thought about, or if you've tried content marketing but felt like I just kind of fizzled out or I didn't get much results from it. Because in this interview, Gray talks about his exact strategy for getting results through content marketing, how he used it to grow Guava Box from about 500 to 1,000 views per month at their website to over 12,000. So he knows how to do this stuff. It doesn't take, you to be a brilliant writer. It just takes a strategy, knowing your customer, knowing the pains that they're going through, and then actually following through on a plan. And so that's what we talk about in this interview. Had a lot of fun talking to him. Very entrepreneurial. He also started Do Inbound as a platform for content marketing agencies. And basically because the stuff they were dealing with as an agency, no one was there to really solve it. So they built that to scratch their own itch and now are running two companies at once. So really cool stuff in this interview. I think you'll love it. And before we get into the interview, I want to do a quick plug for something we have going on at trepxgroup.com/accounting. If you are an entrepreneur and you are kind of new to entrepreneurship, and you may have frustrations with accounting. So Kahuna Accounting is our core business that we've grown over the last couple of years. We have over 200 clients all over the country. And all the time we run into people who are like, I'd love to outsource my bookkeeping, but I can't really afford it yet. If that's you, we have just started TREPX Accounting for entrepreneurs. And basically what that does is we will set you up in an accounting system. And then after that, it's DIY plus support. So the idea is, a lot of accounting systems are not that hard to use for new entrepreneurs, but they are hard to get set up in. And if you don't get set up properly, it's never going to work. It's always going to be a mess. It's always going to be difficult. So what we're doing is setting up people up and providing a support system. So there's way more details on our website. I don't want to tell you all about it now, but I'd love for you to check it out because the financial piece of business is so important. So check it out at trepxgroup.com/accounting. But for now, don't even worry about that because we have an awesome interview for you to listen to with Mackenzie. So I'm really grateful that he joined us. Check him out at guavabox.com and also doinbound.com. Those are the two businesses he has. So without further ado, please enjoy this interview with Mackenzie. Hello, Mackenzie. Welcome to the TREPX Podcast. How are you doing today?
What's up, Micky? I'm doing well, man. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it is. It's great to chat. We have so many things to talk about. You are a total inbound marketing expert, which is something that I'm really passionate about and is exciting to learn about. And I think everybody needs to know more about it. And you've got a couple different businesses going. So I'll just start by hearing your story. Tell us what you have going on right now, and then we'll get into a little bit of how you got there.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll try and condense the story a little bit. I think everyone's story, first of all, everyone loves to talk about themselves. Even if they don't like to talk about themselves, secretly they like to share their story and be known. So there's a lot that I could give you, but I'll give you kind of the highlights that has gotten us to where we are today and kind of the journey, what that's looked like. Where this started out was 2007. I met my now business partner, Andrew Dimsky. We were freshmen at Grove City College, a small Christian school in western PA, and we played lacrosse together. And the lacrosse team at Grove City was a club program, and we had to do, we were both really involved in the operations of the club, so all the marketing, trying to get the name known, the fundraising, the actual coaching. We had a coach, volunteer coach for the last 3 years that I was there, but just involved in a lot of how to run a club program. And so as a club team, we played in a league called the MCLA. It's the largest club league in the world for lacrosse. And there were a lot of other schools, colleges, universities who were going through, the same struggles of trying to figure out how to run an organization. And in a lot of schools, it wasn't very well run. It was kind of just get together, party, and play lacrosse for fun. Mm-hmm. Our goals were, hopefully, they were loftier than that. But the school had never made it to, every year there's the national championship tournament, 16 teams make it to that tournament from 10 conferences, so some at large bids. And we were in the most competitive conference out of those 10 conferences. So we built the teams. Kind of where this all started was our goal was to get recognition from the voter base who selected the at-large bids in case we didn't, as the fallback plan, if we didn't win the conference championship, with that goal of making it to the national tournament. So we built the team's first website. I did a bunch of the website stuff. Andrew kind of spearheaded a lot of the marketing side of things. He did a ton on social media, and also did a lot of, we kind of produced some content sites. We built a site called MCLA DNA and just taught other schools what we learned about running a program, how to run a fundraising campaign, how to lead practices, that kind of stuff. And the whole kind of the story culminates our junior year. We had a good season on the field. We didn't win the conference championship, but received an at-large bid, and we were the 9th seed in the national tournament. Got to go out to Denver, Colorado, and spent a week out there at the tournament. Won our first round game, lost in the quarterfinals to the eventual national champion. And we get back to school, and while we were out there were folks who recognized the name Grove City and had a lot of things to say about Grove City because of the work that had been done online. So teams and coaches and voters from around the country were familiar with the brand of this tiny private Christian school in Western PA. And getting back to campus, there's just the realization, some professors encouraged us in this way, and folks who we were connected with, they said, what you did for the lacrosse team, that's a skill that you guys should be using to help local businesses or businesses. And so we kind of had this, we'd always had this dream to go into business together, start a business together, and we were also really passionate about internet technology and the idea we were just learning. We took a class called content marketing together by kind of a pioneer professor at Grove City who was leading the charge in that space. And so out of that, we started up Guava Box the spring of our senior year in 2011. And so we kind of rolled out into the space as a website design and development company, and then also tried to get into marketing. We partnered up with a software company called HubSpot, who obviously is kind of the cornerstone in the inbound marketing space, the following year in 2012. And that's kind of where our journey into inbound really took off. So that's like the story of how we got started initially. Now, today we've got two different businesses. We still have Guava Box, the inbound marketing agency. We do a ton of inbound marketing strategy, game plan development for clients, and also a lot of website development. Mm-hmm. But we also have a software company called Do Inbound, which came out of pains that we had at Guava Box. And Do Inbound is basically a project and process management software for other inbound marketing agencies like Guava Box.
That's cool. Well, everything it seems like is kind of like it's a natural progression. Like you didn't sit around and think, what business could we start? It was just like, there's a need here, we'll fill it. There's a need here, we'll fill it. And so I'm curious, I think the biggest thing that jumps out to me is, doing it for yourself and for things you were involved in during college made a lot of sense. Like you're just like, this is a need, nobody's doing it, I'll just do it. And it was kind of like a fun thing for you. How different was it to transition then when you started Guava Box? Now it's a total different situation where it's like I'm trying to get clients, I'm trying to help them do these things. What was that transition like, and did you have what were the growing pains of finding your first clients and starting to serve them? Yeah,
it definitely is a big difference, and I think that one of the challenges when you're driven that way, I think that's a great way to grow, is just kind of, I'd say it's very organic growth of here's a need, let's go solve this problem for people. And one of the challenges can be the balance of that and also trying to maintain focus and not just saying yes to everything because everyone has a problem, but understanding what you're actually good at solving and what you're not. But our clients in the very beginning days of Guava Box, it was all kind of the friends and family network and then referrals. So did some really small websites in the beginning, some social media projects at the very beginning, and that kind of grew from there. But when the business really started to take off was in 2013, so 2 years into the business. We'd been with HubSpot at that point for about 9 months and had been practicing what we were teaching other people to do or starting to teach other people to do with inbound marketing. We started practicing that for ourselves, and in a period of about 9 months, went from, at that time probably it was 500 to 1,000 visitors on a monthly basis to the point where we were at 12,000, 13,000 visits on a monthly business at a 2 or 3% conversion rate. And so all of a sudden the leads started coming in, the business started coming to us, and it wasn't just the referral network kind of slowly growing, but we were able to augment that with a lot of inbound leads.
Yeah. So when you start doing inbound, this is a question, we'll get into inbound strategies and pieces later on, but just for your own story, because a lot of people, I think, hesitate with inbound because it's you don't get the instant gratification. It's kind of a longer term. And so to hear that type of jump in traffic, can you point to anything of like where did that come from, or was there anything specific that led to it, or is it just, starting from the beginning and continuing and then it just slowly builds? Can you point to anything that made that jump happen?
Right. There are definitely a couple things. There are a couple key things that you can point to. I will say, though, that our journey was, two things that we did poorly. One is the growth to get to that point was largely, we probably went 6 months seeing not substantial traffic. And then we hit that 7, 8, 9 month mark and traffic started to spike. And the reason for that is a couple blog posts that finally really started to take off and drive, for more competitive keywords, started to drive a lot of traffic to us. Some of the things that we did wrong is we really had there was an overarching understanding of inbound when we got started, but not a strong strategy of here's specifically here are our target personas, here are the questions they're asking, here's what we're going to answer, and how we're going to get the right people to the site. So we struggled with the strategy side, but where things really started to take off was when we invested more time in strategically, what are we going to do? We'd sit down and we'd plan out basically a quarter's worth of content. At that point, we were blogging, I think, 3 times a week, and sat down, and then every week we'd have a batch day, and Wednesday, I think it was every Wednesday morning, we would sit down and we would just dedicate the whole morning to writing and producing content, and then spend time promoting and sharing that content. And that was kind of the point where things started to turn around. Once we got consistent and got a little bit more strategic in what we were doing, it really snowballed from there.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that's important for the listeners here, because I think the biggest challenge, and we've run into the same thing in our business and growing our accounting business, is that you think, we really want to invest in content marketing. We really want to make this work. And the solution to that is just to write as many articles as you can. Just start pumping out articles. And I think what you're saying was it really had nothing to do with the quantity, but really was the personas, the intentionality, and the strategic piece behind it. Would you say that that's probably a common place people go wrong, is they think content marketing is just producing content rather than having an actual game plan behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you jump in, you start producing content, you don't see traction right away, you get discouraged. There was no plan and no vision from the beginning. And so you get discouraged and you just quit doing it and drop it off. And I think we kind of had the benefit of self-selecting ourselves into accountability by choosing to be a HubSpot partner and tied into it. And the fact that we were trying to promote this to other people meant that we couldn't really give up on it for ourselves. I think that helped us. I don't specifically remember a point where we were like, we would dump this if we weren't HubSpot partners. But I think that in some ways that might have provided some extra accountability for us and drive to do it. But I think making that commitment and just, I think starting with a strategy and a clear vision in mind that the whole team is around, and then also outlining, here's what this is going to look like. And we know going in, we're going to have to go at this for 6 months before we're going to see a lot, and that all kind of depends on the frequency and the market that you're in, and there are a lot of variables there. But yeah, I think that is where a lot of people make that mistake.
That's a really interesting takeaway that you were forced into accountability, which totally makes sense, because if you're telling me about inbound marketing and I go to your website and you're not doing it,
right,
and you're not writing, I'm going to really question how much you really believe in this. But that's an interesting point, because that forced you to stay with it and stay with it and stay with it. And I think there's ways everyone can do that. They're not all going to have the same reason as you, but think of ways we can force ourselves to be disciplined and stick with things. And I like what you said too. And I've had other people on the podcast say that they've done similar things by blocking out time. So you just say, this week I'm going to write 3 articles. You'll put them off and you'll never do it. But if you block out Wednesday morning and say I'm going to knock out whatever I can, I think that's going to make you a lot more productive. So I want to come back to some inbound marketing because this is such an interesting topic, and I think a lot of people can learn a ton on how to make it more effective. But I'm curious because, so you've grown this and you started getting traction and it started working really well. And then you had a need. You had some stuff that you wish were better, which led you to starting to do inbound. So can you talk about that transition and really what the problem was you were dealing with, and then what you did to solve it?
Yeah. So I think that what we ultimately needed was, I guess the pain point first was we had these clients who we were doing inbound for, and the challenge was trying to scale the client acquisition and also the operations side of things. And we were dropping balls on the operations side of things where if a client was bad at getting us feedback, we were bad at staying on top of them and saying, hey, we really need this content from you today if we're going to have this ready to go next week. And so we were falling behind on things. And some of the pinpoints that we felt we didn't have, we had very inconsistent processes. So at the very beginning, there were 3 of us who were all working on it, working on most of the projects that we were doing, and then augmenting that with part-time contractors. And if there was a blog post written by myself and a blog post written by Andrew for a client, the tone and the feel, the way that the whole thing was laid out, optimized for search, was going to be very different, even though we had the same general idea of where we were going. And that only got worse as we added different contractors into the mix for different things. So from the beginning, we'd always had this idea that we wanted to be really built and focused around processes and try and build an organization where we weren't required to do everything, but we could build strong enough processes that we could take folks with kind of a base level of competency in a skill, give them a strong enough process that they could follow it and pump out a consistent product that was going to produce a consistent result. So trying to outline a lot of our processes, get a lot of that out of our heads and into a system was important. But there weren't a lot of systems out there that one of the things that we learned pretty early on, because we built this internal website with all our processes and started documenting things out, but that wasn't where the people were actually doing the work. And because there was no accountability of this is where we manage our projects and this is where the process lives, when those things weren't intertwined, we just found that we didn't follow the process. Or if we had the process up, we didn't record it in the project management system that we were using. So we tried all these project management system tools out there, like Basecamp and Teamwork and Asana, and there's a bunch of great ones out there. Nothing really had what we needed, and so that was kind of one of the core pains that we had. So we decided we went to HubSpot's annual inbound conference in 2013. There were quite a few other agency owners, and everyone was asking questions around project management tools and expressing kind of the similar pains. And we'd talked about building it on our own in the past, and we were like, we haven't built software before. We don't really know what we're doing here.
Right.
And that was kind of validating enough to where we said, someone needs to step up and lead in this space, and this is something that we'd be excited to try. And so at the very beginning, we brought on a friend who was a developer, and he built out the first iteration. We launched it, soft launched in November of 2013, and the software itself was pretty rough at that point. Everyone bought into the vision when we were able to bring on a good number of agencies as clients. We wound up completely redesigning and kind of rebuilding the platform from the ground up over the course of kind of mid 2014 to beginning of 2015. But yeah, that's kind of how it got started. Was the pain point that we were feeling where we were inconsistent in the way that we did things and dropping balls managing client projects.
That's a crazy story. So just the fact that you have this agency going, I think a lot of people get these ideas like, oh man, I wish I could build this or have this software product, but it's like, I don't have time for that. I'm not only serving my clients, but also doing marketing for my own business, growing my own business, figuring out these processes. And so, what was that like to balance the two businesses at once and launch the software company? Like, was it was it a lot of long nights? Like, how did you segment your time, and were there ever points where you're like, what am I doing? This is crazy.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. That's still a point of friction is you've got this two different companies pulling for your attention and focus, and it just requires a lot of discipline to try and balance those back and forth. And that's something that we're still fighting and improving on. So we brought on a full-time developer to work on the development of the platform, and the development software, I think, always takes longer than that's everything that anyone who's ever built software says, but it did take a long time to build. So that, in some ways, that gave us some runway. The processes that we did have documented helped us a lot. So we grew Do Inbound. It was very different from GuavaBox in that we already had relationships with most of the folks we were selling to. So finding the right leads wasn't challenging, and people loved the idea, and the price point's a lot lower. So the sales process is a lot shorter. We had to grow the team, so we brought folks on to the GuavaBox side to help out. We hired a project manager very early into the Do Inbound journey on the GuavaBox side to help take a lot of the weight off of Andrew and I in terms of the day-to-day over there, and then continue to build out the rest of the team, brought on a salesperson. We kind of built out that core team, and then also the contractor network. But yeah, work-life balance, not great, a lot of work, especially early on, and that's something that we're in 2016. That's one of my personal goals, is to work less this year and to be more effective and more balanced just as a person. But yeah, that's kind of how it is. Cool. That's kind of how it all went down and came together.
Yeah, no, that's. I'm really impressed, and we run into that too. Like we started this podcast, we do things that are like separate and disjointed a little sometimes, and you balance a lot of different things, and it's fun, and you find ways to serve people. And I think that's where you guys were, was just like, if you weren't hearing it from others, you probably would never have done it. But since you were, you knew that there's something there, and it's like work early on that pays off in the long run because it's something scalable with this platform. I think it's pretty impressive that you've built both so quickly, and I think it looks awesome. So Do Inbound is really cool, and so yeah, two businesses going, all this stuff, but I think the backbone of it all has been your content marketing and stuff we were talking about a minute ago. And so I want to go into some specifics and some things we can take away, the listeners can take away to put into their business right away. Because, there's a lot of objections like, oh, what if I'm not a writer? What if I waste too much time? What if I put something up that takes a bunch of time and it doesn't get me any results? What you said before, I think was the most important thing, is to just be strategic about it. And I know that you kind of approach it like having a game plan before you even get started. So can you talk about that for a minute? Just what is a good way, and it's a good time, in the new year to think about this, to build a strategy, build a game plan for your content so that you actually have a plan to follow through on and aren't just, like we talked about before, just going day by day and seeing what happens.
Right. Well, Mickey, let me tell you a quick story about where the game plan kind of came from. What we did is, I think this was end of 2012, maybe beginning of 2013, we brought on our very first inbound marketing kind of retainer client at GuavaBox. And it was a local manufacturing company. We got them all excited about the vision of inbound. We got all excited about inbound and closing that first client after we'd been working with HubSpot for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months now before actually closing someone on kind of a relatively big deal, a 12-month commitment with a bunch of website work and content work. Got them all excited, and we jumped right in and started creating content. And it went great for probably the first 6 weeks, and then it was like, I don't know what content, like what else should we be doing here?
Yeah.
And things fell apart really quickly. Trying to get the client back into meetings and get content from them was really tough. And we wound up losing that client after the first year. We wound up getting them back later on after we had revamped our process. But there was this big realization that, hey, we got them all excited about the vision, but we never spent enough time digging into the business and who they're trying to target and the business goals and getting all this stuff out and setting good expectations from the beginning. And so out of that initial struggle came the realization that building an inbound marketing game plan, whatever that strategy, whatever you want to call it, that strategy piece is at the beginning, that's going to be the key to everything. And I think in the consultant world, I kind of hate the word strategy. I think a lot of other people do too. You're like, you're paying for a strategy. Well, it's only valuable. I mean, it all depends on the quality of the strategy. Is this good or bad?
Right.
So what we do now, and what I would recommend to folks is that game plan for us when we sign a new client, or we're doing this for Do Inbound, or for GuavaBox, for any of the things that we're building ourselves, or for clients, the process is going to look the same, and this has been a big part of our growth. But start by defining who your target audience is, who your buyer personas are. So for us at GuavaBox or at Do, you might start with 2 or 3. First, just start with one. Who's your best customer, and who's the person who the buyer persona. One mistake that I see a lot of people make is they target the person who's ultimately writing the check, especially in business. This is primarily B2B, but that's not the person who initially finds you or comes into you. And so for us now, working with a lot of mid-level companies, some larger enterprises than we were working with back in the beginning days of GuavaBox, we're not talking to a second-generation owner of a family business anymore. Now the first person to find us is somebody who's a marketing coordinator in an organization. They have a VP of marketing above them, a CEO above them. There's multiple people who are higher up. And so figuring out who is that person who's going to do the research, who's going to find you, that's the person that we're targeting. And what we do is we walk through with these buyer personas. We've identified 2 or 3 people. We've kind of figured out the narrative of what does their everyday look like, who are the people who influence them, who do they influence, what are the types of pains that they have, and kind of their general demographic, psychographic information. You're taking that, and what you want to do is figure out what are the questions that they ask, what are the ways that they describe the pains that they're having. And so we kind of walk through the buyer's journey. We break it down into 3 different stages. You've got the awareness stage, where folks know that they have a pain. They don't know what the solutions are yet. So the way that they talk about that pain at that point, that's going to be the key to attracting people to your site or to your content at that point in time. We've got the consideration stage, where now they know that they have the pain, but they've also identified some of the potential solutions. And so we're looking at, what is this solution versus that solution? And a lot of versus or comparison type of content does well here. And then at the 3rd stage, the decision stage, they've kind of selected, this is the general type of solution I'd like. So if we're looking at Kahuna accounting, I already know that I want to outsource my bookkeeping, and I'd like a professional company to handle this. But now this is a lot of competitor type stuff. So what's the difference between Kahuna and Bench, and where, how does this break down? So we kind of try to map out that buyer's journey and what are the phrases that they use and the questions that they ask at those stages. And then all of that persona question research that we've done translates into a very clear content and conversion plan. So we're building out content assets, obviously, to attract folks. And we can talk more about content if you'd like to get into that as well, but also conversion assets, where how are we going to convert people? How do we get people to our website, through our website, and then what does our whole marketing funnel look like as we draw people through?
Yeah. That's a lot to think about. I think it's really helpful to start with the personas and start with their journey, and then build content to reach each level of that. And so when you do that, that's kind of step 1 in the strategic framework. At what point do you bring the content plan into it? Or I guess the better question is, what's that process look like? Like now I have my persona, have that journey mapped out. How do I strategize? How much to write, when to write it, when to post it, and things like that.
Yeah. So a lot of this is going to have to do with your goals as a company. I'm trying to grow more than 30% this year. well, I'm going to have to be more aggressive than I'm trying to maintain market share, grow at 10%. And it's also going to depend on the size of your business and the industry that you're in. And I think that that's kind of the fluff. That's all true what I just said, but it's also can be kind of fluffy when the reality might be you need to just pick something to start with and don't just start small and continue to grow it from there. But what we recommend and kind of what gets built out during this game plan process is starting with the end in mind. So for us on the do inbound side, it's not the end of the journey, but the sales we do right now to sell the software, we're using in-person demos or live webinars. So that's not the last point in the sales funnel, but that's the point that we're trying to get people to as we're thinking about this initial content.
Yep.
So to do that, we kind of map out what are the stages that people need to go through to get there. And typically to acquire a lead, the most common way of capturing a lead right now for folks is to send people to what's called a landing page where there's a content offer built. It might be an ebook. It might be an email sequence. It could be a video series. It could be a bunch of different things. And that content offer is supposed to be valuable enough to the person that they're willing to trade you some identifying information in order to access that information. So when I said we were generating within 9 months of HubSpot, we're at 12 to 13,000 visitors a month. That doesn't do anything to help grow the business. It's a nice number to throw out there, but it doesn't mean anything because I don't know who those people are. So then when we start converting those folks, and we've got 300, 400, 500 leads coming in a month, now that's more helpful, and we can follow up and build relationships with those folks and identify who might be a right fit and who's not. So that content offer is kind of the identifying what those content offers are, what's going to answer the questions that these people have at the different stages in the buying process. The content offer is kind of the cornerstone of a lot of what's going to happen because that's the answer to at least one or a bunch of those questions. And then that's going to drive your blogging strategy, your social strategy, your SEO strategy, a lot of the things that come out from that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it goes back to that first answer, just that the more you know the persona and the things that they're struggling with, the more your content's going to connect. And I think a lot of people will just write the things that they care about, things that they're thinking about. And the more you can understand what people are going through, the more your content's going to resonate. And I think you guys, I talked about this to you before we did the interview, but just like the headlines on all the pieces of content at GuavaBox just make you want to download them. So there's something where that that connects, like it speaks to people, and I think that works out really well for you guys. And I think it's something people can recreate. You just have to know who they're going after. And so I know as we kind of start wrapping this up, one other thing that I'm really interested to hear about, going a little bit deep for a second, is how we were talking about this before, like the buzzword now is like cornerstone content, how you can create this piece that's really powerful. And I think you guys have strategy on maximizing the efficiency of content and just building campaigns around that. So can you talk about just how you approach cornerstone content and just maximizing the impact of it?
Yeah. So I'll kind of give you an outline of what, if I'm building a content offer in a funnel, how this whole thing works. Basically, on the actual website, the first time a visitor comes there, they're going to see a content offer that's geared towards the awareness stage, depending on the industry, maybe the consideration stage. My goal is to get them to convert there. Once somebody is converted there, I'm going to then show them content that's in the following stages as we educate them through. But with the cornerstone piece of content, that's the piece we want to get people to convert on here initially. What we implement is we call it the content branching system. And basically, if I've outlined for this persona, this small business owner with these pain points, these are the 10 questions or 10 phrases, 10 types of things that they're going to search for, the way that they express their pain at the awareness stage. I'm going to take that and I might write, the top 10 answers you should be, or the top 10 questions you should be asking when searching for bookkeeping help, whatever is related to your industry. And I've answered in that ebook, I've answered the 10 questions that folks have that they're asking at that awareness stage. What happens from here is the reason this is kind of the cornerstone is because everything piggybacks and builds off of this. I now have all 10 of those. I'm going to break those out into individual blog posts. And realistically, I could take any one of those questions and turn it into 3 or 4 blog posts. I could do one blog post that's an example of how a company has implemented the answer to this. I could do one that's just, here are the answers of things you need to know. I could do a comparison post. I could do what does this type of thing cost. There's a lot of different types of ways that we could pull that out. But I'm going to pull that out into 10 or 12 different blog posts. And I am now going to take those blog posts, write them, and each post, by the time you get done reading the post, there's going to be a link, a call to action, to go back and download that whole blog post. So if someone comes to the website for the first time, they've searched that question in Google. Hopefully you're ranking for that. They come through, they find you, they read the post, and they're like, oh, now I could learn the answers to the other 9 questions that I was going to ask at some point. Now they're coming through to that cornerstone content offer. And so we've made our job easier. We already knew the question and answered some of it in the ebook. We've pulled that out and gotten more specific on it in a blog post that then points them back to learn more about what they were just reading about. And this just kind of continues to move forward. The types of emails that we might be sending people are pulled out of the next cornerstone content offer in the funnel that we have folks going through. And on the front end, from a blog post, every blog post then gets repurposed into it might be 12 or 15 different tweets, and those all pull out a line or a quote or something in the post, and that contextually brings them back to the post, which leads them to the content offer and moves them forward, or Facebook messages, or all the social shares as well. So there's a lot of things that all piggyback off of your understanding of the persona and their questions and the way that you wrap that up in a content offer.
That's awesome. I love it. I've got a lot of notes here, so I think hopefully the listeners do too. And I know one thing I don't want to have happen is for the listeners to hear all this and then think, man, I want to do all that, but it's kind of overwhelming. So as just to wrap things up, I'll let you share for the listeners, a typical entrepreneur trying to grow their business. What's one thing they can do today? What's something that we can take away just to start and get some momentum in the right direction to make sure we hear this and we start to get some momentum and not hear it all get overwhelmed and not follow through?
Right. I think if you're the small business who would like to do this, but it is overwhelming to get started, the place to start is figure out one persona. Who is my best customer? What does that best fit prospect look like? And even if you just start by outlining, here are 3 questions they ask, write down the answers, throw it into an ebook, and get one conversion asset on your website. If you don't have that yet, you don't have a way to start collecting information from people, I think that's the number one thing that I see a lot of small businesses struggle with, is they have no conversion opportunity. And there are lots of examples that I can think of folks who've just thrown on one simple thing. One mutual friend of ours, Josh Bowerly, who runs CPA on Fire, on his website, we revamped his website. He didn't have any conversion offers previously other than a simple contact form. He's got this awesome profit and loss spreadsheet that he's got built out for folks, and we just took that, turned it into a conversion opportunity. Folks only have to enter their email address to go grab this free resource. And he's given that away, and that's generated a ton of leads for him, and he's obviously doing great things with his business. But just starting really small, and his marketing has grown since then. But starting small is a great that's all it really takes to get things started.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway. Yeah, have something that people can go and grab. So I appreciate something simple that people can act on right away, and also appreciate any time we can give Josh Bowerly a shout out on the podcast.
There you go.
He's the man. Gray, this has been awesome. We talked about it before, but can you just share where people can find you, find everything that you're up to?
Sure. So the name Gray is a little bit strange. Not a lot of people can spell it correctly. But I'm on Twitter at @SGrayMackenzie. And you can also find both of our business websites and get in touch with me through there at guavabox.com and doinbound.com.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun, some deep stuff, a lot to think about. So really appreciate your time and all your knowledge. Thanks so much for joining.
Awesome. Thanks, Mickey.
Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the TREPX Podcast. For more episodes, interviews, and business growth tools, please visit TREPXgroup.com.